Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Spiritual Psychics TV with your host on Being Spiritual, me, Ashley Robinson. It's lovely to have you joining us virtually over YouTube tonight. If it's your first time to Spiritual Psychics TV and indeed this show, a very special welcome to you and a little bit of housekeeping. In order to participate in this show, in order to engage with us, we will need to see you on the live chat. So if you can register for a YouTube account and make sure you log in, all you need to do is then access the live chat. That will go back to the studio and Richard will whisper in my email or put some of those comments up. The other thing you can do for us is give us the thumbs up. Now, you don't have to do that now. You can do this at the end of the stream. And the other thing we would really like you to help us do is help us build this community. So if you are in the live chat window, you can click the small X and then you can look for that right forward arrow and you can share this stream. You can do that on Facebook or Twitter. You can copy the link and even stick it in a text message or WhatsApp. And we do request if you're able to do that. It's a great way of building the audience and building our community, helping us get the word out. You can, of course, keep in touch with us on Facebook. There is the fan page, Spiritual Psychic TV Fan Club, and then there's my own page at Ash Robinson Medium. You can find me and SPTV across all of the social channels, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Otherwise, folks, a very warm welcome to you. It's great to have you with us. Since we last met, it was a month ago as we had the special second anniversary of SPTV 2 weeks ago. And actually, it seems like we're going in the right direction, doesn't it, folks? It feels like there is a pathway for those of us in the UK out of lockdown. And nationally, internationally, I know we've got visitors on YouTube this evening from all over the world. It looks like there is some light, not just light at the end of the tunnel. It sounds a bit morbid, doesn't it? I'm sure that with budget cuts, they would have switched that light in the tunnel off anyway. But it looks like we're heading in the right direction. We're all in this together and we've absolutely got it. So in a moment, Richard will start to let me know about a few of you that have joined us. And as I say, do log in and do tell us who you are. If you're watching the show for the first, second, third time, 100th time, and I'll go and say hello. So Julie Caswell says hi to everyone. Hi, Julie. Love and light to you all, Ivy May and team. Jenny White, good evening. Is it Janie? Am I saying that right? Janny or Janini? Janine. It's fourth or fifth time. It has been a long week of homeschooling and work. Janine White, good evening to you. Welcome. Christine Davis, hi. Of that rainbow over your profile picture. And Angel Moon says hiya. Hiya, Angel. Mark Wright, good evening. Good evening, sir. Welcome. Ivy May, good job. I sent you some love and light. Great job. You're here on there too. Joanne Lewis says hi. Hello, Joanne. All right. Kim Harknett. Hi, Kim. Welcome. Kelly McKeaton. Big love to you all. Right back at you, Kelly, from our house to yours. Glenys Huskins, good evening. Terry Wall, good evening. Thanks for all the hard work, Terry, you put in. Spirit of Love, what a beautiful way of saying that. Good evening to you. Stace, good evening, Stace. Gary, hello, Gary. Yeah, great that my old mucker from rugby is becoming a bit of a regular viewer now. I was down at Mitcham Rugby Club today, Gary, talking on war stories with my children. Christine says, good evening. Christine Morris, hiya. Alison Barton, good evening to you. Mary Dixie, hi, Mary. Wonderful lady, my circle leader. Oh, Jim, hello, Jim. Master of all technology now, Jim. The opportunities that lockdown have brought you. Welcome, James. I always say says nice one. I guess you're watching from your new place. I won't reveal details exactly what we're doing, but congratulations, good luck, and best wishes to you and Martin. Joanne Lewis, it's been a long time since she's seen us. Last time we were on Facebook. Well, welcome, Joanne, to the new platform. I say, yeah, we do stream all of SPTV now over YouTube. We've got a fan page and lounge on Facebook now. We just found that we weren't getting the reliable service. Ray Robinson, that name sounds familiar. Good evening, Dad. Mum and Dad, love you guys. Mum and Dad were conducting a funeral service today for the dearly mother of one of the congregation. Send them all some love, light. Gary, glad you had your vaccine yesterday. Well done. I had mine 2 weeks ago, but I'm not going to try and provoke politics or debate about anyone tonight. Everyone has their own free will to make the right decision, and I'm pleased you have. Ray and Jackie did a great job this afternoon. Thanks, Mary. Heather looks like a lovely beach photo there. I don't know if that's Brighton in the background there. Um, yeah, looks lovely picture. Good evening to you, Heather. Christine Norberto. Hi, good evening to you, Christine. Lovely for you joining us tonight. Hesvel, is that right? I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Hesvel. Hope you're all well. Yes, absolutely. Great to see you. I think we've caught up now with most people, and Janine might. Janine is in EastEnders. I'm not. I haven't watched EastEnders since I was a kid. It used to be one of my nan's favourite shows, and it was part of my after-school routine to go through that. But for some reason, I was thinking about it today. EastEnders. I was my kids, their ages, they're 6 and 3, were asking about the sort of lockdown restrictions and why people are still on the telly behaving as I thought. I wonder if EastEnders has actually gone into current affairs? Does it keep up with lockdown and people wearing face masks and adhering to the rules? If there are any EastEnders fans, you'll be able to tell me that. I said, I don't know why. I think it was my nan influencing me this evening, making me think about that. I'm sure she gets to watch it now without having to worry about taping it. I think that's a phrase, isn't it? My son might know. By the time he's old enough for me to say, yeah, tape. What's a tape, Dad? Where do you tape things? Heather says it was beautiful, Brighton. Yeah, I love that old pier. It's the old West Pier, isn't it? I think. Joanne says, "How are you feeling after having the vaccine?" Well, I'm feeling absolutely fine and feeling optimistic. Thank you, Joanne. A little bit of a numb arm, but really pleased I've had it. As someone with health problems over the years, I've actually always taken anything that's been offered to me, and I'm grateful. And I do like to believe that spirit and guides have influenced all of our wonderful doctors and carers and all of the people that are working to keep society going. So I think it's an amazing thing that we live in a world and we live in a country actually where the vaccine is part of our national health service. So yeah, I'm feeling good and feeling optimistic. It's great to build new platform. There we go. Janine says yes, they are. I'll soon. Thank you for Janine. I'm now thinking about watching EastEnders of my nan. So you've brought up some great memories. Right. Well, good evening to you all, and welcome to Being Spiritual. So for those of you joining us for the first time, this is a show about spiritual philosophy. And about a month ago, well, hi Holly. Welcome. I did a little survey on the fan page on Facebook to ask people what sort of subjects they would like us to continue to see. And actually, the most popular was receiving a message. So I'm going to dedicate the show tonight to receiving a message, and I'm going to give two different flavors of that. The first sort of flavor of receiving a message is I'm going to do it from a mediumship point of view and you as the congregation. So I know lots of you come to our wonderful evenings of mediumship, and before lockdown you would have come to our wonderful centers and churches and stuff all over the country. So I'm going to give some advice and some tips as I believe about how to receive that message, how to get the best out of it, how to be a good member of the congregation, and particularly with that virtual flavor. The second part of receiving a message, I'm going to do more around your own individual attunement and how we can receive guidance, instinct, intuition, help from our guidance, from our guides and our advisors. So if anything I say at any time you have a question, throw it in the side live chat bar, and Richard will flag that with me, and I'll probably answer them as they go along tonight. But certainly in about half an hour time, about 8:45, I want to dedicate the last half an hour of the show to answer more of your lovely questions. So without further ado, we'll get on with receiving a message. So thinking about this from a mediumship point of view, I've always said that for me as a spiritualist medium, one of my primary jobs is to give evidence of life after death. As a secondary job, it's to share my knowledge and the truths of spiritualism. And by doing that as a message, delivering a message to someone, that means I have to give you, as the congregation, evidence of a personality, of someone that you knew, evidence of that person, so that you know beyond all sort of reasonable doubt that it is them as the communicator. And there are so many wonderful and beautiful ways we can get inspiration from the spirit world. But when you receive a message, one of the things I've always been taught by all of my circle leaders is test and challenge your communicator. So, as a medium, I do believe that it's our job to give evidence of that communicator. Now, traditional mediumship in that way is very different to some of the other types of messages you may receive at a church or a centre, or indeed on SPTV. On SPTV, we've had people reading palms, we've had tarot card readers, oracle readers, we've had psychic arts. I don't know if we've had sort of pure psychic messages, Richard. I don't think we've had that as such on SPTV, people reading you as the individual, but do correct me if I'm wrong, Richard. Those types of messages aren't necessarily okay, coming from a specific communicator. When you're working with the tarot cards and the oracle cards, they're, we've had experts, haven't we, on the show talk about that. They're working with a slightly different energy. Good evening, Sylvia. So it may be that there is a communicator, and indeed, one of the ladies I had on the show, Rose Anderson, who I nicknamed Queen of the Cards, she'll give you a message from a playing deck of cards, and there'll be a little bit of mediumship and clairvoyance in that too. My mum and other people I know do also a bit of clairvoyance. Kate May, when we've had her on the show and delivering messages. So sometimes mediumship is threaded in with a communicator, but for me, then I'm going to focus just on spiritualist mediumship, that evidence of life after death. So I'm going to rephrase, and Mary Dixie, who's watching tonight, can correct me if I'm wrong. As I say, I've had 2 or 3 different circle leaders, plus the intuition, I suppose, and natural. I can't think the right words tonight. The nurturing side of my parents and sort of being brought up in spiritualism. But one of the first things I was ever sort of told as a medium is, don't ask questions, give answers. Now, it doesn't mean that you're prevented from asking questions, but Jill Hay, who is my, I think, last circle leader, now lives in the spirit world. If I was ever delivering a mediumship, there's one thing she goes, that's a question, don't ask questions. Give them the facts, give them the truth. So reversing that back to the congregation, this is why you'll often hear a medium say, don't feed me. In my case, it's because I'm very well fed, overfed, and overeaten anyway, but don't feed us information. And there's a couple of really good reasons for that. The first thing is you might feed the medium some information which they were just about to give you. And what wonderful evidence would it be if the medium was about to give you that one thing you've just given them? And I think that sometimes mediums are some of the worst members of congregation because you know and you believe so much that the communicator is who they are. You want to provide the medium with the confidence of verification. But it's an instinct you have to pull back on, because let the medium deliver the message. But as a member of the congregation, let them know that they are with you. So it goes back down to the principle and the different ways that spirit will work with you. So if we're not asking questions as the medium and you're not feeding the information to the medium, what is it you're doing? Well, you're giving confirmation. You're engaging with that person. And growing up in spiritualism, I can remember all the wonderful and diverse ways I'd see different mediums with works, and some used to love to hear a voice or see a face, and you used to hear some brilliant phrases from some of the old mediums I've seen at Wimbledon over the years. And if anyone's got any memories they want to share, please do. Hi, Deborah. I can remember when we said, "Oh, Speak up, love. I want to hear your voice. I want to feel your energy. My dad always used to tell me about a little old lady that continued to work at the church. And she would say, sit up and open your legs, love. I want to feel the energy. And I think some of these things were funny, but it was all about that engagement. And online, what a strange and unfamiliar environment that was for many of us, 12, 18 months ago. So the important thing is to let the medium know that they are with you, that this information makes sense. And mediums work in different ways. Last month, and again probably about 6 weeks ago, we went through the frequently asked questions, and we spoke about mediums who see, hear, smell, are inspired by spirits in different ways. And sometimes the communicator is going to tell you, like for instance, the communicator might come through, and I'm making this up, folks, so I'm not actually working. The communicator might say Deborah or Edmonds, and it might make me think, oh, I'm with someone called Deborah, or does anyone understand the name Deborah or Edmund or Edmonds? And it might be really simple. Other times the communicator might come in and just start getting information about themselves. Or they might just give one name, Ethel. It's got nothing to do with anyone in the congregation or them, but it was the one woman who they had, every amount of love for. So it's a little bit like spiritual catchphrase. Most mediums will introduce themselves and sort of say a little bit about how they work. And I'm going to give you, an example of how I work and how spirits work with me. So in the show, I've always said that for me, the difference between a human being and a corpse is the absence of a personality. That personality is what continues to live a life after the life they had, free of the shackles of that body and vessel. And it's from that spirit world, that place I call heaven, that they're able as a element, a personality of pure energy and a place of pure energy start to influence me predominantly in my mind's eye. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes I won't physically see with my eyes or physically hear, but the vast majority of the time, the influence starts to come in my mind's eye. Now, lots of you will know what your mind's eye is. For those that don't, it's the same place that you might share or store your shopping list. Or if I was to ask you what you had for tea yesterday afternoon, it's where you go to. It's kind of like that random access memory that you'd see in a computer, the stuff you're using right now that's perhaps pushed back a little. And it's all about clearing that worktop, clearing that canvas. And indeed, as a budding medium, I used to learn from people like Harry Edwards in his books about how you could visualize a blank canvas in your mind that you could start to populate. Or I'd visualize a rose. I remember when I was about 13 years old, Jill Hay telling me about opening and closing the rose. I can remember working with Mary Dixie, where I'd think about stepping in and out of the light. It's part of that process for attuning and blanking that canvas, getting myself for ready, telegraphing the fact that I am ready to receive messages like an old fashioned radio. And then the way it works for me is as spirit come really close, I've got my principal mediumship guide, a guy called Bob, who I knew while he was alive. I've often spoke about Bob, who was a medium and healer at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church, a wonderful carpenter. And I remember as a very young child, me breaking what would be considered as laws now, sitting on his lap and learning to drive and doing the steering wheel. Now, Bob, for me, is in that place I call heaven. And in heaven, I imagine there's this beautiful waiting room, a little bit like Quantum Leap, where they had the Quantum Leap accelerator, and next to that they had the waiting room where Dr. Sam Beckett's sort of body host while he was back on Earth would go. And that's the way that I visualize it. And it could be totally different when I cross over. I'll be able to have that conversation. But for me, that visualization is what helps the process. And then it's about evidence. So I've said to you, I'm not going to ask you questions. I've also said at times, I'm not a DJ. I can't take requests. If Deborah Edmonds really, and Deborah, I'm making this up, if Deborah Edmonds really wants to speak to her mum, I can't say, well, you want to speak to your mum, I'll try and bring her through. Because for me, it doesn't work like that. You've got your own communicators. Hi, Marcus. And I have to look at the energy in the communicator I've got. So the other thing that I always say to people is recognize that the vast majority of mediums cannot summon the spirit personality that you want to speak to. And if you really want to speak to your mum, but your second cousin twice removed turns up and they give evidence of their personality, then don't dismiss that. Work out that it is an opportunity. It is an opportunity to communicate with someone in heaven. So the evidence and what it is you need to verify for. Now, say most of the time for me, it's the communicator that starts to influence me. and they start to give me information about themselves. And sometimes in the stillness of the mind, I can hear them or see them. Other times they use what is my constant and current memories. So, for example, gender. I would say it's a 50-50 male or female, but it's 2021. We have lots of different people that associate and identify as different genders. But in general terms, I'm looking for my communicator to tell me about the gender they had when they were alive. Was it a man? Was it a woman? And sometimes I feel that from an energy point of view, a male energy or a female energy. Otherwise, I work with colors. So it's probably very wrong to have that stereotype, but it works for me and it works for spirit. Hi there, Atia. I say to spirits, give me pink for girls and blue for boys, male and female. And that is no disrespect. In fact, I'm almost where I am, wearing a pink shirt tonight. I love pink. It's not about associating those colors. It's just the way that I work with my guides. So I'll then know if I've got a male or a female. There are lots of different ways that we can know people. The two big relationships for me tend to be friends, family, and then professional sort of colleagues. Sometimes you get people that kind of fit into both, don't they? Someone you called Auntie Doris that actually wasn't related to your mum and dad at all, was actually a family friend. Or you've got Uncle Steve from next door, who was a neighbour. It's just because he was an older man. So sometimes it's difficult for those relationships to come through. And what I say to spirits is, show me the family tree. I've now got a gender. I know if you're family or friend. Show me my own friends and family so I know. So I'm starting to get that information. And perhaps if someone was a father, I might see my own father in my current memories. Now, that doesn't mean that they are the father as a communicator of the person getting the message. It might just mean that they were a father. And in that kind of spiritual guess who, it's them going through that motions. So I've always been told that in order to pass on a message, I should get at least 3 pieces of evidence confirmed by the person receiving the message. So for me, I'll be thinking, right, is this friend or family? Is this man or woman? And what type of relationship did they have with you? So, for example, so I've got a woman here claiming to be family, telling me that she was a mother. And then what I try and go for is cause of death. They're the things I look for initially. And with cause of death, again, I've come up with a little system. Hi there, Teresa. Good evening. No worries for being late, mate. Good to have you on the show. I have a little system with spirits, and I say, take my right hand towards my left hand side of my body where the heart is to let me know if you had heart problems. Show me the letter C if it was a cancerous type condition. Take both my hands towards the head if it was due to a head or a brain injury, etc., etc. And again, that although I'm asking for cause of death, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of those things add up. Now, I'm not a medical expert. If there are any medical experts on the show, please do correct me if I'm wrong. But if someone that has cancer dies, it may be that on their death certificate, the reason they say that that person died is their heart stopped, or their multiple organ failure, for example. Now, you could argue that the cancer was there for a life limiting condition and that led to their death, but actually it was the fact they had a major heart attack. Or actually, someone that had a major heart attack could have been in a horrific accident, and it was the shock of that. So again, cause of death can be a confusing thing for a medium to understand. But the first thing I'm doing, because I'm not asking any questions, so I'm not on the show going, anyone want to talk to someone that's dead? Hi, Karen. No worry that you're late. Lovely to have you here this evening too. I'm not asking you any questions. I'm saying to Spirit, who is here? Who wants to come forward? And in the waiting room, Bob starts to line them up and go, was you a man or a woman? Was you old or was you young? Was you a boy or was you a girl? What's your rough age? As I start to get that information, then that's where you as the congregation, in terms of receiving that message, need to be thinking. Now, I've been there. I've been on the other end, and you think, oh, I'd so badly love to hear from my Nanny Hazel, who passed with heart conditions. So the medium starts saying, oh, I've got a woman here. You think, ding, ding. And she was a grandmother, ding, ding. And she had heart-related conditions. You think, ding, ding. And you go, yeah, it's me. And then the connection is up north. And I think, oh, my nanny Hazel had nothing to do up north, but you're still hoping it's with you. Now, the thing with mediumship is sometimes we're drawn. Hi, Lisa. Sometimes we're drawn to bits of the congregation virtually. Sometimes I've done that when we've been doing the church service and the church was open. I knew if I was perhaps online or in the congregation because the communicators start to influence. But the other day when we were live, we had about 500 people all sort of communicating in the live chat window. I had to ask that communicator to give me even more evidence because it turned out lots of people, and I'm making this up, folks, lots of people had a mum in the spirit world that had a heart problem, also understood, the letter B or something like that. So all of that becomes quite tricky. So in terms of you receiving the message, you could also lean back and think, do I know these people? Do I know a man or woman? Do I know someone that was a mother? Do I know that? And then you start to think, does all that information make sense? And can I interpret it right? Because actually, my granddad had cancer, but this is true. My granddad did have cancer. It was sepsis that effectively killed him. But if he told the medium it was cancer and he did have cancer, am I going to say, well, it weren't my granddad if everything else was right? So you need to think open minded, but you need not to give information because sometimes, and this happens a lot in private readings, when you start engaging with one person, it's almost as if your communicator sees it as an opportunity to jump in. So Lisa Paris, who's just coming, good evening to you, Lisa. If I'm giving out the information, I say, I've got a man here claiming to be a granddad, give me the letter D, saying his name was Dell or Derek, and Lisa thinks, oh, that sounds like my granddad. And actually she starts coming in and saying, yeah, you're with me. And then I say, and he was married to a woman called Hazel, and Lisa thinks, oh, you're not. Or someone else comes in and go, oh, I can take that, but he was married to Doreen or someone else like that. All of a sudden, because the medium's starting to engage with the person, if your communicator was there, and let's be honest, we all have spirit communicators with us all of the time, suddenly you can end up with multiple communicators. And indeed, on SPTV, I've had exactly that. You end up with, a guy called Derek that was a grandfather that died within the last 5 years. And it's like, wow, how many people called Derek died within 5 years? And it turns out lots. And it's like the communicators, by putting the information on the screen, it's almost like you're feeding the information, but you're also almost pushing your communicator forward. Now, in a private reading, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but again, you're feeding information to the medium, and it should be really that comes at the end, because once I've given you the information, if someone like Lisa says, oh yeah, absolutely, you're with me, and the communicator says, I didn't know her, the medium's responsible for saying, okay, well, we can't go on to the message. So all of this in terms of you receiving the message, send out that positive information, affirmations, tell your communicators you want to hear from them. You're going to have more luck in summoning a communicator than a medium is that doesn't know you. And of course, you will know more about your communicator than the medium. Diana, no worries. Good evening. No apologies for being late needed. So there's that opportunity as the congregation in terms of receiving the message to not feed the information to the medium. Don't respond if they're asking sort of fishing questions, and I've never seen that happen on SPTV anyway. Of course, if the question is one of verification, that is slightly different. I'm trying to think. So, for example, if I've got 3 people called Bill all on the live chat saying, I think you've got my wife, I could say something like, which one of you would understand the wife that also used to knit? So I'm asking that question for verification. Or if I'm saying, no, which one of you would understand the Bill that had cancer? Or which Bill had cancer? So I suppose questions like that are okay, because it's now about narrowing down and being absolutely certain that the communicator's with you. But again, and I've seen this when Richard's had 500-600 people all watching at the same time. Effectively, what's happening is it's almost like their communicators are all kind of jumping into the same space. So if everything makes sense and you're absolutely certain, and you can take that. And you might just take that message, even though you've not had to accept it. And I've had feedback from some of the public demonstrations of clairvoyance that sometimes it does work like that. But once the medium narrows down who they're with and it feels right, the message that that person gets should be quite individual and specific to them. Now, that is a general term of receiving the communicator. The next part is, of course, receiving the message. So don't feed the medium. Give enough information to say that you are with them. Wait until they've given a couple of things, because if I, as a medium, is saying, oh, I've got a nan here, anyone understand a nan in the spirit world? Almost all of you are going to have knowledge of a nan. Don't just jump in and say me, 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 me. People do that. Sometimes that's because they're desperate to hear from their nan, and there's no problems in that. Other people, my dad used to sometimes refer to them at church, they're almost like body snatchers. They'll grab anyone else's message. Now, you don't really see that as much these days. Generally, it's people that are so desperate to get that evidence of life after death that there's just excitement. And of course, who wouldn't be excited? But to quote Derek Acora, for the believer, no proof is necessary. To the non-believer, no proof is possible. So just bear that in mind, folks, and know that your loved ones are always with you. Now, the next part then is you've now narrowed down the medium to know that you're with them, and those things make sense. And hopefully, what will throw throughout the message is additional things in order for you to receive. And this is where you need to think really open minded, in the same way you were thinking open minded about the communicator. And you think, oh, I really understand, a guy called Derek. Yeah, that was my granddad. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, he had some heart problems, or the blood poisoning. Yeah, the sepsis. Okay, yeah, right. That's all there. And then he's suddenly talking about, oh, and this is me as the medium. Oh, the communicator is also saying, what about Uncle Stan? And you think, well, I never had an Uncle Stan. No, no, you're not with me. Whereas actually, if you think, well, hang on, I think that he had an Uncle Stan. I'm sure there's family memories of that. And actually, all he's doing is coming through and he's showing you that personality. Now, the other thing is that the medium is almost limited, the communicator, by the palette of the medium. Now, hypothetically, it is absolutely possible for a communicator with knowledge to pass that on to the medium. So, hypothetically, I'm giving a meeting to someone who English is a second language. Let's say that their primary language is, something Chinese like Mandarin. The communicator comes through, and the communicator only ever spoke Mandarin. In theory, the communicator could be whispering to me in my mind's eye in Mandarin, and I could be going that out. But I've got no idea how to pronounce Mandarin. And language is a man made thing, a human made thing. We don't need language to communicate, particularly from the spirit world. So actually, I've found in those situations, a communicator has influenced me in a way that I've just communicated in a language which makes sense for me. Occasionally, spirit will come so close that your voice can change, your tone can change, and your personality. But remember, of course, that it's me interpreting the information. So if I end up saying something on behalf of the communicator and you think, well, that doesn't sound like my granddad, he wasn't a very, thoughtful person, bear in mind the medium is a medium. There is you, there is the communicator, and there's a spiritualist medium in the middle that is doing their best in terms of spiritualist catchphrase to understand the information. Some people do go into the spirit world, and what you get from them is exactly the personality you knew, recognized, and understood. Other people continue to learn. They continue to educate themselves. They become wiser. If they were a particularly nasty or wicked person, they might find themselves in a prison of their own making in the spirit world, where they look to learn and evolve. It might be that they see the detriments of their character that was trapped inside the physical shell of their body. And once they're able to get rid of those shackles, no worries, Sally, welcome to you. It might be then that they can get to that point of saying, "Do you know what? I am sorry. And I'm sorry that I never said sorry. But now I'm dead and I don't have my body. I'm not so stubborn and stuck in my ways. I can see that." So for some people, their personality does change a little, and they're trying to show you perhaps some soul progression or them working off some karma. So stay open-minded to it. But as a medium, in terms of you receiving a message, I shouldn't do what Harry Edwards used to call carrier bag mediumship. That's where I'd say, for example, Sally Work has just come on. Sally, I want you to also take the name of Hazel and Stan and Dickie, and you go, oh, I can't. The easy thing is to go, okay, Sally, take that away, love. You talk to your family, and I'm sure that will make sense to you. Now, it might make sense to you, but Harry Edwards always used to say, if they can't understand it at the moment, don't stick it in a carrier bag and get them to take it away. Go back and challenge the communicator to add some context. Okay, Stan. Right, he's actually saying Stan and Rita. Stan and Rita. Does that make sense to you? Oh, yeah, that was my Uncle Stan and his wife Rita. They're up here as well. And he's just saying that they're okay and they send you their love. So it's a beautiful thing to be able to challenge that communicator and ask for more information. And sometimes I've had that in live demonstrations. I'm making this up again, folks. Got a young lad here, said he died in a car accident. Can anyone understand that? And I had a guy put his hand up and go, "What was his name?" And I think if I knew his name, I would have told you. But actually, the fact that he asked me that question, I suddenly come up with the name. Steve. His name is Steve. Oh, I don't know him. Someone else goes, "Oh, I knew Steve that died in a car crash." And you go, "Ah." So sometimes those types of questions are great. Sometimes those questions can, of course, throw you. And sometimes spirit just can't answer, or they don't answer, because as much as I imagine them in that waiting room, it's still very much in my mind's eye on the canvas where they're trying to paint that picture. So as a member of the congregation, communicate, engage. If you're doing it on SPTV, you're getting into live chat and say, what you're saying is, I'm saying yes to everything. So when you say, Ashley Robinson, yes, you are with me. I understand everything you've said. Richard would know, right? That was said at 2040 by Sally Worker. And he'll say, Ash, Sally Worker's just accepted everything you've said. And I'll go, great. Anything that comes in afterwards, it'd be for me the case to see if I work with you, or if I get then multiple people all accepting the same thing, that you as the congregation go, actually, yeah, there's now 3 of us. I don't understand the last couple of things he said. I'll know that my communicator might have been there. I've either been pushed out of the way, or they've pushed out of the way, or I'll just accept the love from the fact I know that person's in spirit. They've influenced me. So again, we've now narrowed it down. I know I'm with, and Sally, I'm going to pick on you because you've just said, sorry, you were late. And I know you were there. But Sally, I'll be able to say, right, yeah, I'm Sally. Communicator says, yeah, I knew Sally. And I go, right, Sally, I'm with you. You've accepted A, B, and C, X, Y, and Z. Let's now ask them what they have to say. And wouldn't it be great if they had all these ascended master sort of pearls of wisdom ready for us to download? Wouldn't it be great if they had some deep spiritual philosophy to pass on to us? And I asked them for anything that is appropriate. Again, more evidence is lovely, because now I've given you 3 or 4 proofs of their personality. I might start to get a glimpse of their sense of humor, or their warmth, or their unconditional love, or their cheekiness, or mischievousness, or kinkiness, or anything that it is that they're trying to share with me that lets you know I'm still with you. Be that, memories of West Pier at Brighton, or whether or not that was little dog Brandy that used to yap at their feet and is now up with them, whether or not it is there are other people in spirit who came to help them or have passed up since they've been up here. All of that evidence, again, it's about you being open-minded. It doesn't all have to make sense. Spirits aren't necessarily methodical. They don't come in and give you an A, B, C, D, E, F, G agenda in order. They suddenly got the opportunity. They finally found a medium that they can work with. All the information's coming out, and they just overwhelm the medium with everything. Oh, let Sally know that Dave's okay, Fred's okay, little old Brandy dog's all right, and I really enjoyed that steak dinner, and tell them about the holidays in Brighton. It becomes overwhelming. So you're trying to give the snippets of information, and really, I think for SPTV in that live chat, saying, yeah, thank you. I remember the holidays in Brighton. Yep, thank you for that. If I say, oh, they're remembering holidays in Brighton, and you think, oh, I never went on holiday with them to Brighton, you could, of course, go back to them and go, I don't understand that. And that, again, is then a key for me to go, why are you showing me holidays in Brighton? Ah, well, they're telling me they loved going to Brighton, and they're showing me the West Pier. They're telling me, or making me hear, or making me smell fish and chips on the beach. And you might say, well, I didn't know. I didn't know if they'd ever been to Brighton. And then there's this sort of thing of, is it reasonable or is it guesswork? So again, I'm making this up. I live in South London. Brighton's only about an hour and a half away. It's reasonable that anyone that lives anywhere near me has been to Brighton at least once, and likelihood of had fish and chips. So you could say, well, that information is so generic and so woolly, I don't even know if it's true, but it doesn't make it wrong. If they've decided to bring it forward, it should be relevant. And again, as the medium, I'd always challenge my communicator. Come on, folks, I'm giving this message to Sally. If she doesn't understand the significance of fish and chips on Brighton Beach, give me something else. And again, it's that aspect of, we don't do carrier bag mediumship. So even if you think, well, I don't know for sure that they never went to Brighton, you can just say, yeah, thanks for that. Don't know, not sure. I could then go back and ask for that information. And part of you receiving that message is the relevance. So Gary's put in a question, and yeah, I'll ask that one. I see a couple of names I recognise. So I'll leave that up there for a minute, Gary, and I'll just finish this train of thought because I'm very easily distracted. So open-minded. Look for the connection back to you via the communicator, because if your mum's turned up but your dad's in spirit too, perhaps your mum's got a little message from your dad, and when they say bullseye darts Sunday nights, you think, yeah, I know that dad like that. So it doesn't matter that your mum's communicating, because it makes sense to you. And it's your private life. You don't have to stick it in the live chat. You don't have to give full verification. You can just say, yeah, thank you, or understood. And again, when I'm on SPTV, for me, once I'm with the communicator, I know the message is for you. So I don't need that constant verification. It's all about homing in. But it is a really nice thing to do, to say, yeah, you're still with me. Yeah, thank you for that. All makes sense. Mediums, we need enough ego to get online or get up in the congregation, but not too much. Our head's too big, we can't get out the door. Verification is very important, because the human being and the confidence need to do this. It's always nice to hear a yes and a true or absolutely. The no means that you're only as good as your last no. So you take it as a challenge, and you move on. Right, I'll take some water, and Gary, I'm going to answer your question. Gary, so answering the last part of the question first, would love to know if they're okay spiritually. Gary, I believe they are. And I know that both those people are indeed in the spirit world. And I've had confirmation that they're on the other side. Steve Whitley in particular was, a father figure to me growing up. I was lucky enough to know, I'm not going to mention their names because of the way that social media works, but you know who I'm talking about. And they're boys, and I grew up from youngsters, so I was very fond of that man. And I had confirmation from him around his illness and when he passed over. So getting readings from a friend is sometimes lovely. It also makes it hard. Giving a private reading to a friend is hard. So hypothetically, Gary, if I was giving you a private reading now, everything I know about you, I would say to my guide, is irrelevant. Absolutely irrelevant. Don't give me stuff like, oh, Gary, would you understand, South London grassroots? I can see a muddy field with a burnt out car that you've got to move before you can play sport and rugby. Even if that's what your communicator was giving you, I know it. So I say to Spirit, irrelevant. Give me something I don't know. Well, and Gary, I'm making this up. I'd say, actually, his second cousin twice removed says you ate a corned beef sandwich for lunch this afternoon. And he knows that because he was with you and it was his favourite. You go, yeah, that makes sense. That's the type of evidence. So, yeah, I do get readings from friends all the time. I do get influence and inspiration from them. Some I've never heard from, and sadly, the older I get, the more people I know in the spirit world. As a youngster, when I was about 18, started giving messages. I didn't know that many people in the spirit world. Sometimes I would hear about them from other mediums, but yes, I do get them pop in from time to time, and particularly with mutual friends, they come in, and yeah, with those two people in particular, yeah, they're all okay, and they're all spiritually. And that actually sort of goes for everyone. I've never had evidence from the spirit world that anyone in that place I call heaven is in a rush to come back. I hear from people that sometimes they're gutted, they're pissed off, or they're devastated to have gone when they're done. It was a sudden shock. I've never heard from anyone, this is horrible. Heaven, horrible place. Can't wait to come back. I've heard them talk about judging themselves, detriments of the character they recognize. I've heard them about perhaps answering to members of their own friends and family where the truth has come out and it's been difficult or it's been challenging for them, but again, that they're okay. And what a wonderful thing to get that evidence of their life after death and to know that they're okay. Thanks, Gary. Good question. So moving us on a little, because I'm going to be opening up to the FAQ, and I wanted to finish with the receiving messages in general. There is this element of I've been open-minded. Sally says, I've stayed in Queen's Hotel and always have fish and chips in Sally, that message was for you. Thank you, Sally. Right, yes. open-minded, you're picking up the pieces, you're realizing that spirit are quite lateral, they're just throwing in the information. If it still makes sense, give that confirmation in the congregation, in the audience. Now, something that you could always obviously do as a congregation, you could say, what was their favorite place to live? And they might know the answer. And it might be that they're so close to the medium, they can just snap, give that answer. Other times, because they're not physically talking, it's just the end of the connection. So when I've done private readings as an experiment, I've sometimes said to people, you can ask a question. And there has to be a lot of trust between you receiving the message and the medium, because of course, if you're one of those people who's a non-believer and no proof is possible, you could ask deliberately sabotage questions. And certainly in public demonstrations, I wouldn't really be prepared to do that, because spirits aren't always up to all of the tricks that some people might have. And actually, you could think you're with one person who's claiming the message, and really, as a medium, you've missed that opportunity. And that is why you're looking for enough evidence for someone to say, yes, you're with me. I'm saying yes to all those things, and it makes sense. And now I'm thinking open minded. I've got my second cousin twice removed, or I've got a wicked uncle that I didn't really like, but you have given evidence of him. I'm happy to hear from him. And you can, of course, at that point say, and I don't want to hear anything else. So, Kim, I'll get to your question in a minute. Okay, I'll come back to you, Kim, in a moment. So open-minded, you're accepting the message. Of course, you're hoping they're going to give you a bit of advice. And this is the last sort of thing I'd finish with in receiving the message. If your nan was a financial advisor, when she dies and she goes to the spirit world, she probably still has an element of financial advice. But unless she's kept up her continued professional development, she's probably not able to give you the best financial advice. And if you're expecting them to do that, it could be quite tricky. However, if it was your nan and she loved you, and she's now in a position in heaven where she can see a slightly bigger picture than perhaps where she was, she might be able to give you a bit of advice or a bit of a steer, or tell you it's going to be okay, because those are the things that she wants to have. And I do think that's because the future's not yet written. There's an element of destiny written into the kind of the finish line that we're heading in the general direction towards. And if that finish line is Brighton Beach, and I'm in South London, there's only so many ways I can get to Brighton Beach. And it might be that my nan can say, based on the path you're going, I can see you getting the train, and therefore you're going to get to Brighton, and it's going to take you 2 hours. It's going to cost you 25 quid. But actually, if I then decide to get in a car and drive down, that was my own free will. And she was giving me the advice on the snapshot about what she could see. It's not fortune telling. It's about what they're feeling, what they can see, the path they can see on. Perhaps they've already been to Brighton, they've seen it's raining. So they might be able to say, take a coat, because I think the weather's going to turn. That's the way that you receive a message as a member of the congregation. That is in it in a nutshell. Now I'm going to take a quick pause, take some water, answer Kim's question. Then I'm going to give you just 5 minutes on you as a medium or a budding medium receiving messages and inspiration, and then we're going to turn it over to questions. So Kim says, when you were talking now, do you get messages? As my mum was called Hazel and she had heart problems. So Kim, I do. And you know, I am a working medium. I don't believe I was with you, because my nan was Hazel and she had heart problems, and I was deliberately picking members of my family in the spirit world who kind of gave me approval to talk. But like I said, if your mum was called Hazel and she had heart problems, perhaps my nan coming through and saying it was okay to me to use her name, perhaps your mum Hazel was there too. As I said, like attracts like. And the heart problems, you could have both Hazels in the waiting room with my guide Bob talking about their heart problems and talking about the way they live their life. So again, it goes back to the fact, if she's in the spirit world, no doubt, because it's always the case, they're going to be okay. They're going to be in a good place. But thank you for that question, Kim. Okay, so receiving a message. Based on the chat room tonight, now a handful of you are working mediums, all different sort of standards and flavors and levels. Some of you are just starting on your own spiritual journeys. And there is a part to sort of play in this. Joanne, I'll come back to your question in a minute. Okay, thank you. Joanne, yeah, we'll come back to you in a moment. So the idea being that if spirit are around us all of the time, and you bring your communicators with you, they start to influence us as mediums, Why don't they just communicate with you? Now, to a certain extent, I think that's because when they get to the spirit world, they get given the walkie talkie and they go and say, right, use this walkie talkie, stick it on channel 2. That gets you from heaven to earth. And then on Earth, we've got a walkie-talkie. We're on channel 3 or 4 or 5, or we're still working on AM, FM, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. And there's an element of the fact that we are the device, can communicate with heaven. Heaven is still working out exactly as an individual new energy to heaven or new energy returning to heaven, how to use that walkie-talkie too. But when we speak, they can listen, they can influence that, and they can hear it. Good evening, Pamela. And there is this idea that they are influencing us. Perhaps in this incarnation on Earth, we've not even discovered the fact that we've had the walkie-talkie all along. We've not put it to the right channel. As we start to sit in development circles and we learn more about this and we start working the mind's eye, we start to get that walkie-talkie working. There are mediums and indeed anyone who could pick up a pen and feel inspired to write something down. Shirley Brown, Shirley Monaco, that joins us a lot on here, does some beautiful poetry, and she's talented as a poet herself. Some of her poetry is inspired. She doesn't know where it's come from until it's there. Other stuff is, rhymes and things that she's written from her own talent. So I've always said to people, you have nothing to lose by writing questions down on a piece of paper that you have for people in heaven, and then seeing what you feel inspired to write. Perhaps do this just before you go to sleep and see if you're influenced in your sleep state. For once you're asleep, your consciousness, your personality is very close to that energy form as it rests the body. Perhaps you might automatically write the answers in your sleep. Be wonderful physical phenomena if they're able to write the answers for you when you wake up. Or perhaps if you ask closed questions as opposed to open questions. Now, closed questions tend to finish with a yes or a no, perhaps a maybe. So, for example, I could say, Grandad, should I wear the red or blue tie? And then I go to sleep. In the morning, I think it was red. Grandad was influencing red because I kept it quite defined. That's a different type of question of to Grandad, what color tie should I wear? Or Grandad, should I wear a tie? Now it's only a yes or no sort of question. So think about our questions. Asking questions with answers like yes or no or red or blue potentially make it more of a 50-50. And then if you're not sure, you can go where you feel guided. And as part of this spiritual philosophy show, we spoke about the fact that I believe every person has at least one principal guide. And for many of us, we have dozens, if not hundreds, as I start to understand the complexity of around it. And that principal guide is someone who loves you so much, decided on your incarnation, they were going to dedicate their entire spiritual life to guiding you. So when you're asking those yes and no questions, it could be that they're able, because you have a great relationship with them, tell you the answer. And it might just be that they decide via your brain to put the pen in your left hand or your right hand, or help you to zig or to zag or to go left or right. Sometimes that gut feeling, that intuition or that instinct, when people talk about following their heart, following their brain, that could be your principal guide working with you. It could be your second cousin twice removed in the spirit world advising you. And that element of receiving a message, it's about making that space. It's about clearing the shopping list from the mind's eye, asking the right questions. And as soon as you start to feel the difference of your own subconscious and your own thoughts, even if it's a conversation with something greater than yourself, your higher self, you can then start to ask questions about who is telling me this? Is it my principal guide? Is it my mum, my nan, my second cousin twice removed? Is it a psychic ability? Some of our remote viewers you've heard about that have this psychic ability to read minds, to have their mind and their personality wander in almost like a sleep state. Find out where the information is coming from. Challenge your communicator to explain who they are. Find out more about your own guides. All of this, obviously, for those that work as mediums, comes through your professional development in development circles. We learn about opening and closing and meeting your guides and your different guides and establishing relationships and disciplines. But I like to think that every day I take a spiritual step forward. I try and take a spiritual leap forward. Learn new things, understand more about my own guides and the way that I'm working. And although I'm very proud to have Bob as a principal guide in my mediumship, it's only now sort of 20 years later working as a medium, I understand that he isn't the only person pulling all the strings, but Bob was someone I knew on earth. It made it easy for me to understand that relationship. And indeed, one of my circles, Jill Hay, it was her own father who used to advise and guide her. And then behind that are other spirit guides at different working levels within the spirit world who are able to help us. So in terms of receiving that message, clear the mind's eye. Look for the feeling of intuition and instinct. Look for something greater than yourself. Think about writing, drawing, working in color, asking those questions before you go to sleep. The final thing that I'll leave you with is that first thing in the morning, if you really want to draw someone close, ask them to be with you and talk to them in that same familiar way. Know that if they can, they will communicate with you, but they'll be hearing you, seeing you, and learning how to do that from the spirit world. And if you want to take them with you, invite them to do so on the day. Show your unconditional love through your service. And know that every time you show that love, that power of love is what they feel too, and will bring them closer. For like attracts light. Sorry, like attracts like, light attracts light. Now they bring you close. Ask them to advise and guide you. And at the end of the day, thank them. Thank them for that influence or that guidance. And know that you will learn to continue to either channel the message, act as a medium, or just learn to understand more about your own intuition and instinct. So it's coming up to 9 o'clock. I wanted to make sure the last 15 minutes are more about more questions. I can see that Pamela Roger has joined us and said good evening to everyone. Richard, on the screen, could you take me back one question? I think it was a question from Kim. Wendy Lindsay, Guiding Senses. Hi, I'm very well, thank you. No worries for being late. Yeah, Richard, there was a question that came up from a Kim, I believe. Joanne, thank you, Joanne. So what do you do when you get animosity from a severe? So for those that don't know me very well, I have dyslexia, and I'll be honest, this is a word I don't know. So Richard, can you explain it to me, or can I quickly Google it? Is that more like anger or conflict? Is it animosity? Yeah, there we go. So I'm showing my own intelligence or lack. Or dyslexia has actually nothing to do with intelligence. It's just the way I learn, and words like that I sometimes find difficult. So yeah, I think I generally got the right understanding. It happens. Now, first thing is, I've always said this: light is more powerful than darkness. So anyone particularly dark, nasty, evil, unfortunately, they still exist in the spirit world. If they were a nasty, wicked person while they're alive, when they die, there's not much that changes. The only thing is they're not necessarily going to be able to influence in the same way. And even if they don't judge themselves and make a prison for themselves, they're certainly not be allowed to a sort of free realm. So they are generally looked after. There are higher forces that I still don't understand the full context of. The next thing is part of what I was saying there about challenging your communicator, learning to get your guides. The idea is that your guides are there to protect you. I actually refer to Bob as my doorkeeper, my bouncer between this world and the spirit world. And no one comes into that waiting room and is able to influence me without his permission. And for me, Bob is an important part of that. Bob was physically, in the prime of his life, a very fit, healthy, strong man. He was a amateur or even semi-professional boxer, and I associate him with strength. I know that he has my back, and he's just one of an army of people that have my back. So no one from the spirit world can hurt me. They could perhaps scare me if I'm not fully prepared, and a lot of that then comes from my professional disciplines. What have I had to eat? More importantly, drink. Am I well rested? Am I stressed? Have I had 6 months of homeschooling and not enough patience? All of those things are part of my own professional discipline that I have to get absolutely right when I agree to work with spirits. But I know that my guides have got my back. And in terms of them bringing the communicator forward with Bob, if they are particularly nasty or wicked, if they are coming through and they're particularly angry as the communicator to the receiver, you have a professional responsibility to also act as a filter for that. So I've never had this, right? But let's just imagine you've got someone in front of you who's killed someone, and the communicator is the person they killed. They might come back with quite a bit of beef on this person, and actually, it might be exactly what that person needs to hear, but they might not want to. So you have this professional responsibility as a medium to understand the importance of the message and what you can give, and that goes back down to establishing the communicator. And in that situation, which is hypothetical, folks, you'd be saying, "Well, do you understand? I've got, I'm making this up. A man here that says he was killed by someone in a car. He thinks there was alcohol involved, and the person's thinking, I killed someone and I was drink driving." It's up to them, isn't it, to say, "No, I don't understand them." In which case you say, "I'm sorry, this communicator's not with you," and you ask them to leave. Or your guide says, "Actually, this person might have died as a result of that person's responsibility." Perhaps that was all they needed to hear. The fact that that person has made it to heaven, they're okay. So you've got this personal responsibility. In the same way that if a communicator comes through and says, "I think that you're gonna be in trouble," but yeah, let your guides do the work. Let them protect you. Give what's necessary, and then check with that verification the person is comfortable and in charge. Aminosity from someone in the congregation. So that can be more tricky. When the church was open more regularly, we used to do a regular Sunday night. Ivan Lee used to do a regular Sunday night at church, and used to do some coaching and mentoring with me, and used to invite me along as his special guest. Now, Sunday afternoons in Wimbledon, down at the Witherspoons round the corner, used to attract all sorts of wonderful, diverse characters. And every now and then, some of those people that have popped in there for a bit of Dutch courage, perhaps they're a partner that's been dragged along by their partner, doesn't really believe in this, would come in, sit at the back of the church, and you'd get the odd sort of heckle or load of old rubbish. And it's really hard to deal with those things. It's really difficult as spiritual beings, isn't it? But you basically have to sort of say to people, it's not appropriate, to shout in churches or be rude in churches. And if they're using foul and abusive language, they're scaring people, then they have to sort of leave. Equally, it might be that someone really doesn't want to hear from a particular communicator. Again, I'm to protect all identities, I'm making this story up, but you have someone that was the victim of perhaps abuse or sexual abuse. It might have been a family member or a close family member, and when that person then comes through, the anger or the animosity you get from them in the congregation is they don't like that person, they don't want to hear from them. And sometimes spirit can almost slip in that way because you don't know the full story yet, and you're in the early stages of making it really clear. But that's where you just have to say, "Thank you, I've heard what you've said, and I'm not going to go any further with this message." Other times, you do get people that again are non-believers, and they can just show that animosity in the congregation. Say, can be friends or family members, spouses of people. Equally, I've done a lot of charity dues that might be in places like pubs or working clubs, and the people there are there to support the charity or the cause of the charity. And actually, it was a brilliant test for me as a medium, because on a Sunday morning at Women and Spiritualist Church, everyone's there with open arms, sending me love and light. I know lots of people in the spirit world and be grateful for that communication. In a pub on a Friday night in South London, you've got people there that have had a few beers with their arms folded and go, "You're a medium, prove it. Go on then, prove it to me." And it becomes very, very challenging. And all you can really say to your guides is, "Give me some evidence. Give me some evidence of life after death. Let this evidence shine through." And there will be people that have paid there because they want to see a medium, and you have to work with that. Other times, you are able to give people that little bit of proof that they were looking for. So thanks, Joanne, for those questions, and hopefully I've answered them. Any other questions that have come in, Richard? Okay. Gary says, "Brilliant explanation. As I always wondered if a person would haunt a person that killed him." Well, I certainly would. My granddad used to laugh about the fact that first training course he was going on when he got to the spirit world was the poltergeist course. He was going to go and learn how to become a poltergeist. He was going to come back, and all the people that had crossed him or wronged him. And in theory, that's possible. I'd like to think that my granddad's more likely to just turn up with a sheet over his head, ringing a bell, saying "last orders" or something like that. But yeah, I think it's absolutely possible. I've been involved in criminal investigation, law enforcement. There are a few other professional mediums that I know of that have done that. Psychic cop Keith Charles, lots of you will be familiar with him. And actually, there's this really interesting sort of thing. And I remember hearing people talk, detectives, police detectives talk about sort of spiritualism, saying things like, well, there's no good, if I'm involved in a murder investigation and I've got the murder victim coming to me as spirit saying it was Dave. Dave did it, and he did it with a gun in the study. You can't take that to court. You can't take the court and say, well, I've actually got the communicator, the victim with me, and they're telling me X, Y, and Z happens. You need evidence. So the question would always be from spirit, if you're coming through, give us that evidence. And just before I answer Julie's casual, I'll just share one other story with you. There was a young lady that tragically was killed not too far from where we are today. And we as a church were contacted by a friend of them who claimed to be receiving messages from their friend that had died. And I use the word claim because I'm trying to protect identities in some of the story. But the long story short is I met with that person and I absolutely believed that they believed the communicator was their friend. And in fact, I think they gave so much evidence that I genuinely believed that. But I believed at the time that they believed that. And I said, let me record all of this information for you. Let's produce a witness statement and let's see if any of that could be evidence for the police. Now, the friend was able to give a lot of information to describe the mode in which they'd been killed and able to give a description of the person who they believed was a stranger had killed them. Now, one of the interesting things is if you're ever put in this position, even when you're acting on behalf of the church, if you walk into a police station as a member of the public and you have nothing to do with the criminal investigation and you've got a witness statement full of details of a murder and a murder suspect that no one else knows about, it kind of makes you look a bit dodgy. So you have to caveat with that. You have to explain what it is you're doing, and you have to, of course, put yourself on offer. Now, the reason I mentioned this story is apart from my physical weight, the description of the murderer was actually very similar to me. And I had several phone calls with the detective afterwards who said, you've sort of described yourself in this statement, same hairstyle and same height and same hair color. And of course, I was able to just be really transparent and recognize the fact that they might laugh, they might joke, but actually what we were trying to do was sincere. Now, I'm really pleased that the murderer was tracked down, was arrested. I'll never know for sure whether or not any of the information that the friend of this victim had given us via the church was of use. What I do know is everything they said in their witness statement appeared to be absolutely true from what I was able to see then as a member of the public. So yeah, in Gary, your question, they didn't exactly haunt the killer, but they did keep working until they were found. Right, Julie sells a story here. My dad came through to a medium and told a medium he was going to make him really work. Said he wasn't going to tell him who he was, but he was with me. It was my dad, as he described him to a T. Okay, lovely story, Julie. Thank you. I know you've made me work quite hard a couple of times when you've been on other chat forums. I've given you a message without even knowing it's for you, and you've been anonymous or someone. That's been really good. Pamela says, dang, I'm cute. Now that's a profile picture. She says, question, is there a Grim Reaper? So are we talking about Grim Reaper, Mr. Death with the black cloak and the big sort of staff and weapon? Well, I don't think that person exists. In the same way, I don't personally believe that we need a physical body in heaven. Are there elements and angels and forces at work that we don't understand? Yeah, absolutely. And I do believe that there are people that work for spirits and in the spirit world, as well as people that work for spirits in this world. And one of my favorite Hollywood interpretations of that is the film Ghost, where you kind of had, the person that died trying to communicate via Whoopi Goldberg to his partner. But every now and then with the bad people, you had almost like those black shadows. They weren't necessarily bad people, but did come to take away the bad people. And I always liked that side of it, because I think to a certain extent, destiny plays a huge part of your life. And I think that based on the assumption that reincarnation is possible, when you choose to incarnate in this life, you had some choice about the life you were about to live. And I say some choice because they then erase your memory and they give you free will. But actually, if you were always determined or destined to die a certain time in your life, I think there's a likelihood a bit like that other Hollywood film. I think it's called Final Destination. That when your numbers up, your numbers up. And therefore, if you can't control some of those bigger things, live your life now to the absolute max. Some people say you only live once. I prefer the phrase you only die once. So live life every single day in pursuit of happiness. So thank you, Pamela. Um, and yeah, as Richard said, you only live this life once. Yeah, absolutely. So live that to the absolute max. Now, historically, we do punch out about 9:15, and we are approaching that. So if there's any other burning questions, please get them in. Otherwise, we'll be doing adverts and goodbyes very soon. Terry says, I regularly feel a change in energy around me, get high pitched ringing in my ears, rarely get a scent. As I was thinking this, I smelt smoke. So I asked for it again, got it a second time. I mean, Terry, again, what a lovely way of summarizing you receiving a message or receiving communication. And I think it's all about asking for things. To quote Hollywood's NCIS Gibbs, there's no such thing as a coincidence. And if you are communicating with an intelligent energy, get them to do it again. Always love the concept of a Victoria Sounds. Is there anyone there? One knock for yes, two knocks for no. Actually, the question is not is anyone there? The question is who is there? And if you're working with an intelligence and you're working with an intelligent energy, challenge that energy to show you, tell you, explain who they are, give you evidence that they are communicating. Thank you for that, Terry. Okay. If there are no other questions, I would be grateful for some feedback. What did you say, Richard? Okay, good. Yeah, he's just confirmed there's no other questions. Folks, it'd be great to get your feedback. So just as we're doing the adverts and closing, do drop your comments in the chat bar, assuming there's more than just Terry still here. Think about helping us grow. Share this stream. If you're on Facebook, join the SPTV fan page. Find out about all our upcoming events. Subscribe to this channel. Make sure you've got your notifications turned on. You're getting all the information about the different things that are coming up. And on the SBTV fan page or my own page at Ash Robinson Medium, on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook at Ash Robinson Medium, you can comment on the poll we're running about other subjects you would like to see. But it's been an absolute pleasure being with you this evening, talking about the concept of receiving a message. And I my philosophy of interest. Hopefully, I've shared with you the truths as I know them, which goes back down to the mission, isn't it? Prove life after death and share with you the truths of spiritualism as I know them. So, otherwise, I think we're going to do a couple of adverts. Sam Pertz and a demonstration of mediumship. There's a different reader every week, but bookmark this. Saturday nights from 8 p.m. on youtube.com/spiritual psychic TV. Demonstration of mediumship with Sam Pertz. And Sunday morning, join us from Wimbledon Spiritualist Church in juxtaposition with Hatbridge Spiritualist Church, a divine service with Reverend Mum and Daddy Robinson, Ray and Jackie. We do hope that we'll be able to open the doors soon in the next couple of months, but the service will always be streamed live from Wimbledon Spiritualist Church every Sunday morning from 11 a.m. You'll have mediumship reading and an address there, folks. And then Sunday afternoon, chill out with the ladies on the sofa, the Sunday sofa, every Sunday afternoon from TPM fortnightly on youtube.com/spiritual psychic TV. A little bit of advance notice of a brand new show, The Spiritual Touch with Wendy Lindsay, your personal pendulum, healing energy and therapist on Zoom, Tuesdays from 2 p.m. via Zoom. Details will be on our SPTV fan page. Look out for other adverts about other shows that have recently started, including the Psychic Picnic with my mum. Richard says, just about to, I must be psychic. Lots of information about shows and everything else on the website, Instagram and Twitter. Psychic Picnic with my mum, Jackie Robinson. Supply your own food and drink from home via Zoom at the moment. Opportunity opportunity to chat over lunchtime about everything spiritual and psychic, including ambassadors of spirits and pioneers, different books and subjects. I think people have really started to enjoy that. There's a wonderful community within SPTV, and I've got to say, for me, that warmth and that love you get from this SPTV community is pretty fantastic. So thank you for that, folks. It really is quite lovely. Okay. Diana says it's been very interesting, Ash. Wonderful evening. Thank you. Well, thank you, Diana. Jim says very interesting, Ashley. Most informative. You're very welcome, Jim, sir. Thank you for joining us. Kelly McEaton, thanks for a very interesting show. Really enjoyed it. Stay safe, you all. Yes, indeed. Stay safe and well, folks. And thank you all for the feedback. Gary says, great evening as usual, Ash. Look forward to your shows. Thanks, buddy. Look forward to seeing you soon. Hopefully, we'll have some rugby potentially at Mitcham in May. So watch out for seeing us on the field again. See if we can get off some of those lockdown pounds. Thank you, Gary. Terry says, fantastic as always. Thank you, Terry. Marvelous job you do in supporting this this community online as well. Very much appreciated. And thank you all. Psychic Opinion was great, says Karen. And Karen Goddard, lovely lady. Okay, well, it's 9:20, folks. I think it's time to let you all get home. A special thank you to Richard in the studio. Does an amazing job of producing all of this. Thank you so much, Richard, for this opportunity and for presenting this show. Thank you to Lisa Paris, who's got in the last bit of feedback there. Very much appreciated. Folks, stay safe and well. Look after each other and look after yourself. Keep on keeping on, particularly if you're going through a difficult patch. Keep on going till you get out of that. Friends, I've been Ashley Robinson. This has been Being Spiritual. You've been on SPTV. Good night. God bless.